Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing a complete Magic Find build guide allowing you to achieve over 400% item rarity. I'll go over everything step by step, including the gear, the skill tree, and finally the gem setups. And now something unusual, this build was initially using Lightning Arrow as a main skill and you can still do it with this setup, however I'm using the basic bow shot instead. So this is a basic bow shot build. It's just much stronger than Lightning Arrow, you can test it yourself. When the early access was released, I felt like this basic bow shot could have some hidden potential. However, when I saw some people using it as a main skill, I was like, are they trying to be cool? Are they trying to prove something? But actually, at the current state of the game, this skill is extremely powerful and it doesn't use any mana. I hope I made you wanna try it, and let's continue with the build overview. Specifically, my build reaches 423% item rarity. This is particularly the maximum amount of item rarity achievable on a Ranger Deadeye character. However, this doesn't include the Ingenuity belt, which can further boost your item rarity from rings, adding about an extra 100% or even more item rarity. But I tested this belt and the character becomes simply too slow with it. That's why this build uses a Headhunter, which I believe is the perfect choice for this setup. If you prefer to use Ingenuity, you should pair it with armor that enhances your mobility, such as Queen of the Forest to significantly boost your movement speed, or Temporalis for insane mobility using Blink. By sacrificing the armor, which in my case adds 100% rarity, and using the Ingenuity belt together with Queen of the Forest or Temporalis, you would end up with a similar value of around 400% item rarity. Theoretically, it's possible to push this up to 500% item rarity with the Rarity chest and the Ingenuity belt, but I don't think it's worth it, especially considering the significant diminishing returns at those amounts of rarity. I think Queen of the Forest is even better than Temporalis, as I heard that Temporalis isn't that fast in close layout maps. So as I progress further with earning currency, I may consider choosing the Queen of the Forest progression path for insane movement speed. The budget for this build is either 250 divines or 150 divines. The difference comes from a unique diamond jewel which costs around 100 divines and provides double gain damage bonuses, specifically gain cold damage and gain lightning damage. If you don't have that kind of budget, you can start with a jewel that only provides a single gain cold damage bonus and gradually upgrade the build over time. As for the entry level cost, it's not too high. You can comfortably start working on this build with a budget of just a few dozen divines and slowly improve it by increasing both your damage and item rarity. When it comes to strong and weak points of this build, its strong points definitely include high rarity and high damage. You can comfortably run tier 18 maps and take on pinnacle bosses. However, I personally use this build for farming tier 11 maps with triple delirium, specifically with triple distilled paranoia. That's because tier 18 maps with triple delirium are a bit too challenging for this build. It lacks strong defensive layers and is very squishy. So I stick to the strategy from my Atlas juicing video, where I explain in detail what setup I run to achieve solid results on tier 11 maps. The link to this video is in the description. When it comes to the weaknesses, they are quite clear: low defenses and relatively low mobility. The character has low evasion rating with 35% chance to evade while using acrobatics, and it feels a bit slow with relatively low movement speed, though this can be mitigated somewhat with movement speed focused jewels, which unfortunately are very expensive, so I'm not using them at the moment. That's it for the introduction, let's get started. Let's start with the gear because it's a crucial part of this build, as the main goal is to stack a lot of rarity on it. I want to focus on all the sources of rarity in the gear. The bow, which I paid 70 divines for, is very important because it serves as the foundation from which we scale our damage. Of course, if you have extremely strong other components in your build, you can still achieve very high damage even with a weaker bow, but it's still a crucial part. This bow was important for me for its base physical damage and the additional arrow, as 2 arrows are definitely too few. The percentage to critical hit chance is also very good on the bow because it's the base hit chance from which other bonuses to hit chance are calculated. Now let's move on to the quiver. As you can see, I don't use a primal quiver with attack speed. Instead, I use a visceral quiver base, which has increased critical hit chance as its implicit mod. The two most important mods here are +2 to level of all projectile skills, which will scale with the bonuses from the quiver, and +25% to dexterity, which significantly boosts the overall dexterity of the build. This is essential because it allows us to convert dexterity points into intelligence, which will give us more damage combined with the Hand of Wisdom and Action gloves. The remaining bonuses are increased damage with bow skills, increased projectile speed, which thanks to the tree node treats every increase to projectile speed as an increase to damage, providing additional increased damage, and increased critical damage bonus for attack damage. As for flat damage, it's just 1 to 16 lightning damage to attacks, which is quite low. Of course, a better roll would be ideal, but these quivers are quite expensive. I paid 10 divines for this one. Now let's talk about the helmet. The most important aspects here are the maximum rarity of 62% and an additional 20% rarity from 2 soul cores, as this is a corrupted helmet with double socket. Of course, we want life on it, and the 30% intelligence is a nice addition, as it gives us a damage boost thanks to the gloves. An ideal mod for the helmet would be increased crit chance, but I think such a helmet would be extremely expensive if it even exists on the market. The body armor is a Warrior Invictus with mods for 10% increased rarity and 10% to all elemental resistances per socket. This is a corrupted version with 5 sockets, so after socketing 5 soul cores for rarity, this armor will give us 100% increased rarity and plus 50% to all elemental resistances, which will significantly help with capping our resistances. In addition to that, I made sure to prioritize a high roll of armor, evasion and energy shield. While these aren't massive numbers, every small increase to evasion or energy shield will be helpful for us. I chose this body armor to maximize rarity in the build, as I'm not running the highest tier maps anyway. However, if you want more defense, damage or mobility, you can swap this armor for a high evasion rare armor that will definitely help with survivability and defense. Alternatively, you could go for Queen of the Forest to boost movement speed, or even opt for the crazy Temporalis, which offers huge mobility with the blink skill, though it requires significant investment and is better for open layouts, but not as good as Queen of the Forest for closed layouts. So that's the setup for the body armor. The gloves are Hand of Wisdom and Action, and I believe they provide the best upgrade for the least investment in this build. The damage boost they give is incredible. Right now these gloves cost only a few divines, so I think you should start your build with them. I chose a corrupted version with 2 sockets to fit in 2 soul cores for rarity. Technically, I could achieve more rarity with rare gloves, but I sacrificed some rarity on this slot for a massive damage boost. These gloves give us attack speed from dexterity and lightning damage from intelligence. The lightning damage from intelligence is more beneficial for us, so thanks to the dexterity we've gained from the quiver and other dexterity bonuses, we can convert more dexterity points into intelligence. On my skill tree, almost all of my dexterity points have been converted into intelligence for maximum damage increase. When it comes to the boots, these are rare boots with 2 sockets from a corruption, and they also have 29% increased rarity. They have some life, which is essential, and 35% movement speed, which is maxed out, so that's great. Some additional mana is always useful, and 24 to intelligence also increases our damage. As for the sockets, of course, I use soul cores for rarity. However, these boots are not optimal, as they give us 83 energy shield, but no evasion, so in the future I plan to replace them with the same boots, but with a base evasion, which is really important. If you're looking for boots for this build, make sure they have evasion. Moving on to the jewelry, the amulet is a solid choice because it has a lot of rarity along with life and 33 spirit, which is the minimum amount for this setup. The perfect amount would be 35 spirit on your gear or more for extra improvements. It also has resistances, which are always nice. As for the enchant, I'm using Doomsayer for 30% increased area of effect and 30% increased damage for Herald skills, which will help us with shattering whole screens of the enemies with our Herald's setup. For the rings, I focused on stacking as much rarity as possible along with life, resistances and flat damage. Resistances are crucial on rings because you can't easily cap them on the rest of your gear. One of my rings has flat lightning damage, while the other one has almost no flat damage. Ideally, I would have some flat damage here, but these rings are expensive. If you feel your build lacks damage or you don't have a strong enough bow, you could sacrifice one of these rings for one with more flat damage and less rarity unless you can afford a combo of both, but this can cost you a few dozens of divines for a nice ring. For bosses, I also have a second Warrior Invictus chest, which I bought for 2 or 3 divine orbs, which gives increased maximum life and all elemental resistances per socketed rune. I have 3 runes for evasion and the 4th rune is for fire resistance to cap my resistances. While it may seem like a bad choice, it increases my life pool to nearly 2.5k and gives me a bit more survivability for bosses. The belt is Headhunter and I believe Headhunter is the best choice here with the stolen monster modifiers. It speeds us up, adds projectiles and is overall better than the Ingenuity belt in this specific build setup as long as you don't have a body armor like Temporalis or Queen of the Forest to increase your mobility. Headhunter is the best choice for now. And in the future I'm considering a version with an interesting implicit like for example some elemental resistance so I can cap my resistances easier and use better rings. The charm I use is a gold charm. The best mods in my opinion on it are increased duration and chance to gain a charge when you kill an enemy, as it will increase the overall uptime effect, which is very important for increased rarity. For the life flask, it has the mod that applies recovery instantly, which is really helpful. If you spam the flask a few times, you'll essentially get your life back instantly. It also has increased charges, which allows you to use it many more times. I think this is a stronger mod than reduced charges used, so I recommend going with increased charges over the other one. As for the mana flask, it also has increased charges, and the other mod is increased recovery rate. This ensures that your mana regenerates faster. While it won't restore as much mana as increased amount recovered, you'll find that it regenerates more quickly, meaning you may need to use it a bit more often. Now let's move on to the skill tree and 3 jewels. I'm taking the Quiver bonus cluster to increase the bonuses from Equipped Quiver. This is extremely strong at the current state of the game and combined with the Quiver bonus jewels, it can increase our +2 to projectile skills from our Quiver to up to +6. Currently I have +4 as I need more Quiver bonus jewels, which are pretty expensive. Then I took the Pressure Points node for freeze buildup, which is very important so we can activate our on-freeze effects such as Herald Explosions or increased damage from the Ice Bite support gem. Next we need to reach the bottom left where Lightning Rod is located so that lightning damage on non-critical hits is lucky. This is really beneficial for lightning damage, which has a wide range. Then I took this Authority notable here to increase the area of effect, which is great for heralds. This node combined with Doomsayer Anoint on the amulet makes herald explosions extremely big and satisfying. Next I took Split Shot for 75% chance for additional projectile when forking, as we will be using fork support for the main skill. Next we go in this direction, and here's somewhat unconventional setup. I'm still using Bestial Skin for the 100% increased evasion from the equipped body armor, and I also use Acrobatics, even though my body armor has very low evasion. Despite that, I still keep it in the build. Now we reach this point where I have Against the Darkness Timeless Diamond, and at this point we can smoothly transition to discussing the jewels. This jewel gives me double damage gain for each notable in this area for both cold and lightning damage. That's why I have allocated as many as 9 notables here. Now an important note, this jewel costs around 100 divines, so if you're not able to buy it right now, I recommend getting a jewel with at least a single cold damage mod, which I believe costs around 10 divines or less. At this point, if you only had the single cold damage jewel, I would suggest skipping the Staggering Palm and Shatter Palm from this node and reallocating those points into the node that grants Harness of the Elements as well as increased elemental damage and chance to shock. Next important jewel is the Megalomaniac with Feathered Fletching for increases and reductions to projectile speed to also apply to projectile damage. You can combine it with some other good passives. However, those jewels are expensive. I managed to get one with 10-fold attacks for increased attack speed and +2 to strength. Next jewel is the Sapphire one with recovered 2% life on kill for better survivability and increased cold damage, increased critical hit chance and increased elemental damage. Another good mod that you can go for on this jewel is increased critical damage bonus. And now all the other jewels are the emerald ones. In a perfect scenario, I would like to have all of them with 2% increased movement speed and increased effect of equipped quiver, but they are very expensive and I have the quiver bonus on some of them, and some of them are just pure damage with mods like increased attack speed with bows, increased lightning damage, increased elemental damage, increased projectile damage. Another great mod, which I don't have but I highly recommend it, is increased magnitude of shock, which increases the damage taken by shocked enemies. As for the further progression of tree and jewels, the ideal solution would be to go for the adorned setup. However, a perfectly round adorned jewel costs around 1.5k divines at the time of making this video. With adorned, you would then focus on magic jewels with crit chance, crit multiplier and quiver bonuses, along with additional nodes for crit chance. Crit chance is extremely good in this game, but it's also extremely expensive. So that's it for the skill tree. Just one more thing regarding the attribute points. You want to convert almost all of your attribute points into intelligence to maximize the damage while using Hand of Wisdom and Action gloves. The Ascendancy is a no-brainer. You should first go to the Wind Ward notable to have massive defense from 3% less damage taken per tailwind, and then go to the +1 arrow notable. Important note, don't be greedy for the +1 projectile first. You really need to take the Wind Ward node first for the defenses. This is really a lifesaver for Ranger. And in this notable here, you should choose Point Blank. Now let's move on to the gem setups. This setup is designed to work in harmony with the rest of the build to maximize damage and efficiency. The main skill is the basic bow attack, bow shot, linked with martial tempo, ice bite, fork, primal armament and heft. We don't need inspiration for reduced mana cost here, as it doesn't use any mana. Previously this setup was designed for lightning arrow, but I switched to bow shot as it's stronger. You can try it yourself, and if you still want to use lightning arrow instead, it's completely fine, but then replace the fork setup with inspiration and drop the split shot node on the tree. Next gem is Orb of Storms combined with Chain, Persistence, Arcane Tempo and Overabundance. We combine this skill with Lightning Rod for single targets and bosses. We deploy Orb of Storms and then shoot the Lightning Rod into it, so it will chain with the Orb of Storms, dealing damage. The support gems for Lightning Rod are Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Close Combat, Overcharge and Lightning Mastery. Additionally, we have Voltaic Mark, which we can apply to the bosses. Now let's move on to Spirit Skills and Heralds. I'm using Wind Dancer, which increases our evasion rating. This is a crucial defensive skill and it's linked with Clarity for increased mana regeneration, Vitality for life regeneration, and Cannibalism, which helps us regenerate life while clearing maps. If you have more spirit available on your character, you can add more interesting support gems here for further optimization. Next, I'm using Herald of Ice combined with Lightning Infusion, Conduction, Magnified Effect, Innervate and Cold Mastery, and Herald of Thunder combined with Cold Infusion, Glaciation, Longshot, Cold Penetration and Cold Exposure. This combo will cause Herald of Ice to shock and Herald of Thunder to freeze, causing an infinite chain reaction resulting in one-shot whole screen explosions. And now a different setup for bosses. While doing bosses, you disable Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder and you turn on Cast on Shock combined with Ball Lightning, Deceleration, Impetus and Inspiration. The way you use it on the bosses is you first apply Voltaic Mark to the boss, then deploy Orb of Storms, and then shoot Lightning Rods. Lightning Rods will interact with Orb of Storms, dealing damage, and will also shock, causing Ball Lightning projectiles to be casted, which will also interact with Lightning Rods. Remember to use your mana flask, and when you're out of mana, you can also use Bowshot. While switching to this setup, I also need to take out Cannibalism from Wind Dancer, as I don't have enough spirit. And another thing, if you think the boss will be hard, you can replace your Lightning Mastery support gem in the Lightning Rod with the Heft support gem from your Bowshot, but it's not necessary as it causes more micromanagement, which we don't want. So yeah, that wraps it up for me. As for the maps I run, I'm still sticking to the strategy from one of my previous videos called Ultimate Map Crafting and Atlas Strategy for Massive Currency Farming. It's still very profitable, so I recommend checking out that video. The link is in the description. As I mentioned, I run this build on tier 11 triple delirium maps. I could go for tier 18 without delirium, but I think triple delirium on tier 11 is more profitable. Triple deli on tier 18 or even tier 16 or tier 15 would be too risky, and I don't want to lose a just map that I've invested a lot into. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more Path of Exile 2 content, and I'll see you in the next episode.